welcome everybody to my official review of Cuphead. Cuphead is quite the interesting game, and I am absolutely enjoying my time with the game. Let's go ahead and get right out of the way the first thing people are going to ask about this game, and this is its difficulty. How hard is Cuphead? Well, I can tell you Cuphead is not impossible. Is it hard? Yeah, it's got its hard moments. It's got its frustrating moments. It's got its outright, I'm gonna throw my controller through my TV moments. But that is the type of game that Cuphead is going for, and it is a rewarding experience to be able to push through a lot of these levels and win. Once you beat a boss that you have died 20, 30, 40 times on, and there are some bosses you might end up doing this. 40 may be a bit of an overstretch, but it gets frustrating when you're continuously dying over and over and over and over. Get to that last phase and it pops up and shows you how close you were to the end. And it's just one of those rage-inducing moments where you just want to scream and shout. You put down your controller, you turn off the system, say, I'm done with this, I'm never coming back, this game is a piece of garbage, I cannot believe that boss beat me, that was so unfair. 10 minutes later, you're back playing it again, going through the same shit over and over and over until you eventually beat the boss that you are on. It is moments like these that make Cuphead's gameplay shine. It is moments like these that Cuphead just puts that nostalgic grin on your face and takes you back to the run-and-gun era of the SNES and NES systems. During the time that video games were difficult, the platformers made you remember the levels, remember the designs of what was going on in the areas, and remember the patterns that were going on. This is where Cuphead's gameplay is absolutely brilliant. There are some times in the gameplay where I do feel like enemies get you cornered in a cheap position, where you're jumping on a platform and the platform isn't there. This does happen on a few occasions with some bosses, which can be very, very frustrating. But to consider that a flaw, we pretty much have to go back to every single platformer that has ever been made and criticize them for the exact same thing. So that's just something that's accustomed to platformers that's really part of the game. I haven't gotten a chance to dive too much into the co-op, but it is a very experienced game. In other words, meaning that you and the person you're going to be playing with are going to have to work together, time your jumps right, jump at the same time, things like that. There's also the ability where you can actually revive your character or your co-op member when they go through. You have the ability to parry certain enemy moves. These will be represented by a little dot or a pink, sometimes a little dot or like a pink enemy, or things that are usually pink can usually mean that they can be parried. Parrying them also helps increase your special meter, which in turn is a move that you can do that does an increased more amount of damage to the enemy than what it typically would, or you can use them to do a one-shot that's a little bit more powerful than your regular shots to get in more damage. Another thing that Cuphead really does that I feel like is worth mentioning is, kind of like some of the other run-and-gun games that have been present, there's different ammo types. There's different ammos that this thing does. Imagine something much in the veins of Contra. You know, you have spread shot, you have a shot, one shot that, you know, charges, you have something else. You have all these different ammo types that you can go through. There's roundabout, where you turn around, these little boomerangs will sit there and go through and hit your enemy. You have scatter shot, which makes it so you can hit enemies quicker. You have the lob shot, which is a very slow moving item, but it does a lot of damage. You also have charge shot. You also have abilities like charms that you can equip. Some of them are giving you an extra heart piece, which is very, very useful. There is also this also gives you like the ability to parry automatically, or just among other useful things. There's something you're going to want to explore, kind of find your own play style, kind of adapt to, take a look at the boss you're fighting, see what works best to fight them. This game is all trial and error. You're going to have to work to see what weapons work best against certain bosses. And this is why Cuphead's gameplay is really rewarding, because it challenges you to think outside of the box. The game's difficulty lies in learning the patterns, learning the weapons needed, learning what moves the boss is going to do, learning the phases of each boss, and then overcoming those bosses through repeated playthroughs. So I wouldn't say the game is outright difficult as much as it is just a test of patience. It's much like some of the other earlier platformers where you had to learn the levels. And that's something that if you're a fan of platformers, you are absolutely going to enjoy. Let's hop in and talk about its visuals now, because its visuals are flat out incredible. The game takes place during the 1930 cartoon era. That's the style that they were going for. This is what they've set up with Cuphead. And it's very reminiscent of those old cartoons that you sat down and watched with your parents. It's an art style, and it is a beautiful art style to look at. The design that has gone into each and every single one of these enemies to make them stand out, the way that they look, the different phases that they then in turn move. I mean, you have a pirate that you face, and then his ship turns into this, opens up a big gigantic mouth, and he has a uvula that you'll sit there and fight. You have these frogs that will turn into a slot machine and start firing coins at you. You have a dragon who then in turn becomes a three-headed dragon and persists to try to kill you, all while his head turns into a fire-spitting hose that sends a big old stream of fire hurling towards your direction. Each and every single one of these boss fights have a very unique style that each of them go. The character design alone, for Cuphead, to the normal enemies, to the bosses, there was a lot of detail that went into making this. The fact this game was made by only 3 people blows my flippin' mind. And one of the most awesome nods that Cuphead does is the grainy old real film look that a lot of the 90s cartoons had, the still frame kind of look, where you can see like the little white specks and little lines kind of go through it. This has all been added into the game. It really pays homage to those old style cartoons, and I absolutely love and respect the direction that Cuphead has taken its visuals. Now let's talk about Cuphead's sound design and music, because its sound design and music is absolutely amazing as well. Cuphead has taken that jazz kind of big band music from those older cartoons and really applied that to the game. The soundtrack is something really, really great. I would go as far to say none of the songs really seem to get old, which is an amazing feat, considering how many times you're going to be spending in these levels with these characters, with these bosses. It's amazing that the music never gets on your nerves. It's catchy. It's something that sticks into your head. And it's so fitting towards the game. Its art style, and each song is so unique in the way that they've kind of orchestrated it. It's an absolute beauty to behold. Another thing that's really respectful is the different sounds that a lot of the weapons make, a lot of things you do. It's very fitting for what it is. There's a lot of thought that really went into making the sound, again, like a 30s cartoon. Everything this game does really goes back to the sounds, to that unique style and setup that the 1930s cartoons had. So it's something that I am absolutely appreciating, and just the nods that developers were able to do and incorporate this style. They've done it so well that the game in itself is a visual and sound effect orchestra, or not orchestra, but soundtrack. It's absolutely amazing. And let's talk the last point that I do want to mention here is its world design. Its world design, when it comes to platformers, you're never going into a platformer simply expecting to see a game that is grand with characters, grand with story. The story's there. The story is about a couple of brothers who get themselves into a gambling mess, make a deal with the devil, and they have to basically go through and defeat the devil, gather up these soul contracts to go confront the devil to get out of this plea bargain with him. So that's the gist of what Cuphead's story is about. There's really no room for character development. It's a platformer. I don't expect that from a platformer, but one thing I always will look at a platformer when I play is the different worlds and styles that each thing is set up. And the level design, the boss design, and the environment is so unique. There's so many unique and diverse things inside of this game. From a fight with a dragon, to a bird stuck in a birdhouse, to a pirate, to a rat that sits in a can, and then he hops into a cat that he's mechanically controlling. There are a slew of different things that this game just does. The amount of unique design that went into this is absolutely amazing. If I had to pick one flaw about Cuphead, if I had to take a look at Cuphead and point out one flaw, it would be the lack of run and gun levels. There are about 2 per area, and there's 3 levels. 2 or 3, depending on some of them. I can't remember exactly how many there are, but it leaves me wanting more, because these run and gun levels are just as uniquely designed as the boss fights. They're just as challenging, make you think just as much outside of the box to get past them. And it's kind of a shame that there weren't more of these incorporated in there. From my understanding, the game was supposed to be just a boss run game where you fought the bosses, and that was pretty much what it was. And then it wasn't until later they incorporated some of those things in there. But that's something I definitely want to see if they make a sequel to Cuphead, or a spiritual successor using that same style, those 3 people. I want to be able to see more run and gun levels, and maybe less dimmed down on the bosses. But the bosses are still something unique, the bosses are still something fun, and I absolutely cannot pay this game enough praise. Cuphead is a visual masterpiece. Cuphead's gameplay is rewarding. It's something special if you stick with it. It's satisfying when you finally are able to beat an enemy that you've been stuck on for the past couple of hours and you win. And you can smile onto your face and move on to the next one knowing the exact same thing is going to happen. With that being said, this game is probably not for everybody. This game is going to test the patience of a lot of people. This game is going to require some damn good hand-eye coordination, which you in turn again learn through repeated trial and error as you play through this game. And it's a game that is not meant for everybody. Not everybody is going to enjoy this type of game, and that's okay. But if you do like the SNES or NES era difficulty games, definitely give this a try. It is definitely up there with the veins of Mega Man and Contra in terms of crushing difficulty. Now, Contra, on the other hand, is just flat out brutal. That game was meant to make you bald. I guarantee you, Contra was the game that shot the market up for Rogaine and made everybody start buying it because of all the people losing their hair over that game. But it's definitely not as difficult as Contra, because you don't have to start clear over at the beginning when you die. But Cuphead is a wonderful game that I think if you are into these types of games, if you like the 90s platformers, it's a game that you need to pick up. So this has been my official review, guys, of Cuphead. Let me know, are you guys at all excited to play this? Have you been playing it? What are your thoughts on it? Let me know what you think of that art style, how well done it is. Leave those down below in the comment box. You can follow me on Facebook and Twitter and all of my other social media links down below in that description box. You guys have been watching The Spoony Bard, and most importantly, stay happy, be happy, game happy. The Spoony Bard is checking out.